Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending upon from where you're joining us, and welcome to today's presentation entitled Sage Intacct Real Estate and CRE Portal, brought to you by Ledgerable, a BTerrell company in our 35th year of upgrading small and mid-sized construction and real estate organizations from QuickBooks or a legacy on-premises construction management application to Sage Intacct Construction and Real Estate, the only construction accounting suite ever named by the AICPA as their preferred provider of financial applications. I'm Brian Terrell, managing partner of Ledgerable, once again, a BTerrell company, and I'm joined today by Wes Adams, the publisher of the preferred tenant and resident portal for Sage Intacct Real Estate. We'll visit with Wes in the last third of today's presentation. If you're here for CPE, today's presentation qualifies for an hour of CPE. Please respond to the polling questions that will pop up from time to time and complete our post-webinar evaluation form. Let's warm up with an example question that will appear on the screen now. This question is important. It's not just a trial run. It helps us recognize those in today's audience who will be looking forward to receiving CPE credit. And thank you for taking the time to complete this question. Uh, while you're while you're completing that question, let me just remind you that we've disabled audio and video for during today's webinar to minimize distractions that might happen inadvertently. We've also want to make the point that we welcome your questions, and the Zoom Q&A function that's within the toolbar, your Zoom toolbar or that application, is the mechanism by which we'd like for you to submit those questions. We'll answer them at the end of today's presentation. And please note that we're recording the entire webinar, which means that you don't have to take notes, and we'll share that link with you, and you'll be able to share that link with your colleagues who are unable to join us today. Today's agenda includes a 10-minute product overview of Sage Intacct Real Estate, followed by a 15-minute live look at that application, and then we'll finish up by visiting with Wes and seeing the valuable features he includes with his tenant and resident portal for Sage Intacct Real Estate. Sage Intacct Real Estate works well for owners and operators, for developers, and for fee managers. Owners and operators are generally long-term investors needing interactive, always current reports and dashboards, providing at-a-glance updates of occupancy percentage, lease expiration, and projected rental revenue. Developers may have a long-term or short-term investment horizons and need to track finances across multiple development stages. Sometimes those development stages are accounted in multiple development entities, and a recognized strength of Sage Intacct Real Estate is its multi-entity management, which allows one-click consolidated financial statements for management purposes. And then fee managers are arm's length third parties or sometimes internal departments within larger organizations earning management or shared service fees based on revenue, and as such need tools to protect their customers, to protect their property owners from revenue leakage, and the maximization of expense recoveries, which are critical to preserve property value. They also need tools that ensure customers or property owners are protected when tenants or residents have lease or insurance non-compliance issues. Sage Intacct Real Estate works both for commercial and both in commercial and residential markets. For commercial real estate operators, it supports complex structures around subleases, expansions, multiple expense recovery agreements, lease options, bumps periodic bumps in rental rate uh, uh, amounts, percentage rent, year-end expense recovery reconciliations. For residential, it automates the bulk renewal of leases, tracks amenities, supports roommates and roommate leases, and provides workflows for move-ins, move-outs, lease applications, and tenant screening. And as we'll see at the end of today's presentation, both tenants and residents can take advantage of the CRE portal that Wes makes available, and we'll take a look at later today. Sage Intacct Real Estate is built on the Sage Intacct platform, and as such requires Sage Intacct. Sage Intacct provides core functionality, general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and more. However, Sage Intacct Real Estate does not require Sage Intacct Construction, which is the construction-specific project costing and billing module. But it can coexist with that for subscribers like developers with extensive requirements in that area. A key differentiator is that Sage Intacct Real Estate provides its own user license, which is also a regular Sage Intacct employee user, allowing the Sage Intacct Real Estate user to access all the program areas in the core modules, run any reports for which they are permissioned. And if they need additional capabilities, the ability to enter transactions in general ledger, for instance, they can be upgraded to business user status. Sage Intacct Real Estate takes advantage of Sage Intacct's dimensions. The location dimension has been renamed and repurposed for properties and units, the customer dimension for tenants and residents, and the lease dimension has been provided to account for revenues and expenses by lease. Here's a screenshot of the lease entry form in Sage Intacct Real Estate. I think of the lease dimension as the nexus around which all other dimensions relate, because one or more suites or units can have multiple tenants. A suite can then be subleased, and that subtenant can be tracked because one lease can relate to multiple units. A tenant can expand into the space next door, and that lease or that unit can have different expense recovery or escalation agreements. And because two residents can be obligated on a single lease, Sage Intacct Real Estate supports roommates. Sage Intacct updates all of their applications on a quarterly basis. And if we just look back at last month, we can see that Sage Intacct Real Estate is benefiting from this cadence, the ability to reassign properties from one entity to another was made available in the May release of Sage Intacct Real Estate, as well as the ability to automate interest accruals on security deposits and flatten out those rent bumps in multi-year leases for revenue recognition purposes. Upcoming releases allow us to look forward to enhancements in the tenant ledger in August, a new loan tracking feature in November, and the automation of property tax appeals in February of 2026. It's now time for our second polling question. Once again, we're not so concerned about whether or not you get this polling question correct or not. It's just important to ensure that we comply with the requirements of the Texas State Board. Sage Intacct Real Estate does not require the licensing of Sage Intacct Construction. I just mentioned that that's true, and that for developers who have extensive project costing and billing needs, Sage Intacct Construction can coexist with Sage Intacct Real Estate. It's time now to take a look at the application. The first thing I'd like to do is take a quick tour to remind us of why software is better in the cloud. First of all, we're accessing the application in a browser. It gives us access to publisher announcements, easy access to help and support, and to learning resources. Sage Intacct was built for multi-entities, and this drop-down list at the top shows that we have at least 6 or 7 entities here. We're operating at the top level, which means we are no longer forced to log in and out for each entity like we are in QuickBooks or legacy on-premises applications. In fact, we can create a journal entry that debits one entity and credits another, and the system will auto balance that transaction in the background. We have a traditional drop down menu. We also have a less than traditional workflow based menu. Most of the folks that work in Sage Intacct get up every morning and come to work and log into a personal or role-based dashboard. Think of it like a personal homepage with KPIs, reports, links to outside resources, and to-do lists. Here we're looking at the controller's personal homepage. One thing to note is that all of the numbers in all of these KPIs and in all of these reports are live links to the underlying transactions. To bring this home, let's take a look at our property portfolio dashboard. It includes KPIs and reports that relate to commercial or residential property management, and that's the subject of our webinar today. I can drill into any of these numbers on these KPIs. In fact, if I continue to drill into the numbers as they appear on the screen, pretty soon I'm taking a look at the point of original entry, which means in this particular case, an actual real estate rental invoice entry. If I want to, I can print that invoice to the screen. Maybe I want to download that and email it to my tenant in order to refresh their memory of that particular transaction or to make up for a lost document. At the bottom, our total rent on this invoice is allocated by type of revenue, and each type of revenue is further subdivided by property, by tenant, by lease. This is a recurring theme in Sage Intacct Real Estate and carries to the general ledger entry that is the source for the transaction on which I clicked. Notice that we have that also divided by property, by tenant, and by lease. This allows us to create reports directly from the general ledger on income and expenses by property, by tenant, and by lease. Below these key performance indicators, we see a property income statement with a rolling 12 months of net operating income. Below that, the same report showing budget versus actual. And below that, the same report showing the change year over year in that net operating income. One more thing before we leave Sage Intacct Real Estate's dashboards and reports. Notice that at the top we have drop-down selectors that allow us to choose from properties, from tenants, and from leases. If I choose a lease, click Apply, instantly the entire dashboard is redrawn with details only from that lease. That's the significance of Sage Intacct Real Estate's dimensionalized general ledger and a reminder of why accounting software is better in the cloud. Where do all these property management specific transactions originate? How are we creating these transactions and designating them by property, by tenant, and by lease? Our company module has the table holding the property dimension. This is where we place our properties. The accounts receivable application has the customer dimension, which is where our tenants or residences are maintained. And soon in the future release in 2025, we'll see the lease dimension appear down here in the list of standard dimensions for Sage Intacct Real Estate subscribers. Properties, tenants, and leases are the dimensions that the Sage Intacct Real Estate module, on which the Sage Intacct Real Estate module relies. I'm going to duplicate this tab, which creates another instance of the Sage Intacct program in my browser. It allows me to flip back and forth, making the presentation a little bit easier, and also simulates what it might be for you back in your office when you have a couple of different modules. In the same way that might be able to access the general ledger or accounts payable, we access the source for property management transactions from the real estate module. And to get this module set up for our particular purposes, we need to establish or configure our properties. Then we need to further subdivide those properties into units. And then we need to create our tenant records. And then finally, we need to create our leases. Let's just take a quick look at each of these different dimensions. The first one is properties. Properties are not uninvolved. And the one property that I have here that has the most data is the property dimension, or the property called the Columbia Place. If I switch back to that location or property dimension, you'll see that that particular property is identified here under the dimension entitled CP. The first thing we do when we set up a property is we access that record, give it a name, assign it an entity, and then determine or define how occupancy will be defined for that entity. If it's a residential property, we can designate how we'll track vacancy loss, and if it's a commercial property that has rent bumps, how we might want to straighten those out or flatten those out for revenue recognition purposes. Also, in this record, we need to designate the internal property addresses. We need to define what the square footage types are and the amounts for that. We need to define the different types of revenue that our leases will include on this property. They include, in this case, rent revenue and 3 recoveries: common area maintenance, property tax, and insurance. All of these are further defined as components of base rent, as subject to management fees, or as subject to late charges. An additional feature up at the top allows me to designate a day of a month in which a property manager will receive a copy of a pro forma rent roll for the upcoming rental revenue cycle. If, in this particular case, Chris reviews that pro forma, which compares last month versus this month, and sees that it's appropriate, he can click on a link within that email, which will approve that pro forma rent and essentially complete the billing process for the upcoming month. We determine our deposits, the types of deposits that we will collect for our properties in the property setup, how we're going to calculate late charges, how we're going to calculate management fees, the types of taxes the property is subject to, or the insurance policies that we have on record. And we can include the expiration date for those policies, as well as create a automatic notification to a property manager and a backup property manager so that we ensure those insurance policies do not lapse. If we have attachments such as pictures of the property or other architectural drawings, we can make them a part of that company record in Sage Intacct Real Estate. After we configure the properties, we need to subsection those properties into units. Units are actually also property dimensions. If I go back to my property dimension table, we can see the 10 or so units that have been created within the property dimension to account for our units in Sage Intacct Real Estate. This particular record in Sage Intacct Real Estate is much less involved. It does ask for a classification of the type of property. It does allow us to keep track of the amenities if it's a residential property or unit, and we can then report and do amenity tracking directly from the application. We have to define our square footage for these units in the same way we did for the property. Maybe we want to keep track of the types of utilities that are available to the property, and also maybe upload a floor plan or a document or some other piece of collateral that we would want to store within that unit record. But it's a simple process. Notice, or you might notice, that what we set up in the property is inherited by the units. After we set up those properties, subsection those properties into units, we need to create our tenant records. Our tenants are, if you'll remember, actually accounts receivable customers. We've renamed that dimension as tenants, and each tenant has a very extensive record in accounts receivable that has some additional functionality, allowing me to print off the last invoice sent to that tenant through Sage Intacct Real Estate. There's a lot of detail here, and we're able to add additional tabs and additional information as much as we want. Of note is the ability to add multiple contacts. I've only added an accounting contact for this tenant, but we could allow this, we could expand this contact list as much as we want, and these are available to our tenant records in Sage Intacct Real Estate. Sage Intacct Real Estate does not really end up being the place for most of the management. As you can see, there's just not a lot here. We have basic demographic information only. The lion's share of the information hosting is in that accounts receivable module. However, this is a view into that very same table. So if I wanted to, I could update this mobile number, click save, and that mobile number would then appear here because it's actually saving it to this field. All right, once we have set up our properties, subdivided those into units, and established our tenants, it's time to configure our leases. Leases are also a dimension in Sage Intacct Real Estate. They are a dimension that allows for the association of one or multiple tenants. In the case of roommates, only one of these tenants can be the primary tenant. Also, we can assign multiple entities in a commercial situation, which would allow for a tenant to expand into the space next door. Here's where we define the actual amounts associated with each of those revenue types that we defined in the property. Here, we can create step-ups in rental revenue over time and pre-program those to automatically kick in at the appropriate time. If it's a expense recovery, as in this case, we define the frequency with which we reconcile the billing of those expense recoveries throughout the year with the actual amounts that we've entered through the accounts payable function back in Sage Intacct Real Estate. We define all of the accounts. In this particular case, this particular recovery is only relates to utilities. It'd probably be better named the utility earning as opposed to, I think it's called CAM. But notice that at reconciliation time in January or February or March, the operator will run this application, gather up all of the uh, expenses in each of these three accounts, allocate those to this particular lease by a ratio of unit to the total property square footage. And if they owe us money, then we'll send them an invoice. If we owe them money, the system automatically creates a credit. We can also define our or do define our administrative fees here and and uh, and move on. We are able to define a percentage rent. In this particular case, we're assuming that this is a retail tenant, and we will be calculating percentage rent on a cumulative basis according to breakpoints that are predefined and will be calculated against the tenant's sales as they submit them and as we enter them into the application. In addition, oops, I didn't mean to close my lease record here. In addition to percentage rent, we have a late charge that we've defined to automatically be created in the amount of $500 if our tenants are or if this tenant is more than 5 days late on their rent. Here, we've recorded a refundable security deposit in the amount of $1,800. The insurance certificate that the tenant has given us, the expiration date for that, and then a early warning notification that will be sent both to the tenant and to our property manager to ensure that this insurance policy doesn't lapse. We've abstracted key clauses from the lease. In this case, we've added a parking clause here. It has a expiration date as well. A notification email to the tenant and the property manager so that this clause, changes in this clause, will be made aware to everyone involved in the transaction. And then finally, we're able to attach documents to the lease record, such as the lease, or even maybe in this particular case, I guess, an elevation of that retail property so that we can easily access collateral that's associated with these transactions directly from the lease record. So once we have set up our properties, we've subsectioned those or subdivided those into units, established our tenant records, and entered our leases, we're ready to transact by generating scheduled charges. That's that monthly rental revenue charge. We can generate late charges. We can bill for percentage rent. We can record deposits. We can create a management fee. Management fee generation debits the management fee books or debits the properties, credits the property books for a payment or a payable due to the management company. And if the management company is also a part of our Sage Intacct instance, it will auto create their receivable as well. Here's where we would enter our sales for percentage rents purposes, and this is where we would reconcile our charges. Sage Intacct Real Estate, our recovery charges. Sage Intacct Real Estate does have a lot of reports that come straight out of the box. Here, maybe we can take a look at our rent roll increase report just as an example. These reports are provided out of the box for Sage Intacct Real Estate subscribers. However, as a subscriber or a customer of Sage Ledgerable, we will also provide any report that you require under the Ledgerable Smart Suite subscription. So we are able to create reports against data originated in Sage Intacct Real Estate from both with the Sage Intacct Real Estate application as well as the application report writers available to all of the other modules in Sage Intacct Real Estate. It's time for another question, which is, I guess, our third polling question. Sage Intacct Real Estate allows a user to access the system directly without having to log in to Sage Intacct Financial Management. I don't know why I decided to ask this question because I didn't cover this. However, it is true that if those Sage Intacct Real Estate users have no need to access the core modules, they can directly log into the Sage Intacct Real Estate module through their browser. So the answer to that question is true. Okay, well, you answer that question. It's time for us to move into the last part of our presentation, which is a discussion with Wes Adams, who is the publisher of the preferred portal, tenant and resident portal for Sage Intacct Real Estate. Wes, have you joined us?
I have.
Well, thank you very much for taking time to join us today. The tenant and resident portal that you have created has been of great benefit to Ledgerable and our subscribers to Sage Intacct Real Estate. I'm just wondering, tell us how you came to develop that portal for Sage Intacct Real Estate.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate it. I have been a Sage consultant for about 25 years. Started out doing implementation consulting for Sage 300 CRE, which is used to be called Timberline. Did that for many years, and then over the past 10 years or so, I've built web portals that sit, on the web that talk to on-premise software solutions like Timberline 300 CRE, a property management, service management, Sage 100 contractor. I met Dom Pernay, who was the product director for Sage Intacct Real Estate. One of his property management clients or customers was using my property management portal. Dom got in touch with me and told me that he was developing the Sage Intacct Real Estate product that sits on top of Sage Intacct, and asked me to build the tenant resident portal for Sage Intacct Real Estate and Sage Intacct. That was about 2 years ago, and I have been live with several. Actually, I don't even know how many clients now, maybe 25, on the Sage Intacct Real Estate tenant portal for the last year and a half. So that's how I got here.
Well, lucky for us that you did, Wes, because uh, we would not have made a Sage Intacct Real Estate deal, one in particular about which I'm thinking, had it not been for the fact that that portal was available. And we appreciate everything that you have done to make Ledgerable more successful. The also the other thing that I have appreciated about you is your flexibility. It seems like there were requirements that one of our tenants or prospects had that maybe required you to stretch the functionality within your program. Talk about how willing you are to make those types of changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's always been my goal to provide functionality that clients want, rather than just build something because I think it would be cool, or that may be a nice to have. So on a monthly, quarterly basis, I'm usually in contact with all subscribers, monthly, quarterly. Um, Also have some resources on the tenant portal for ideas. So, I'm in constant communication with them, and I want to build functionality that they need. Um, so, it's a collaborative approach. I think clients appreciate it. And with this, I use a low-code platform for these portals, so I can develop them very quickly, sometimes within hours. You don't have to go through committee, go through development. So I can build it and enhance the product very quickly.
And that's been our experience, Wes. You're nimble and agile and quick to respond. Once again, making us more successful in the process. So thank you for that. S-
Absolutely.
There are a lot of features that your CRE portal provides. However, we only have about 10 more minutes to explore those. And we could probably have an entire webinar just on the portal. But we need to zero in on the top three. So from your experience, can you describe what those top three features are? And then I'm just going to admit to you, in a moment, we're going to want to take a look at the number one the number one feature. But what are the top three that you would give, and how would you rank them?
Yeah, so I would say the top three for subscribers or property managers or landlords are the seamless integration with not only Sage Intacct Real Estate, but also Sage Intacct. So for example, the way that this software works is any change that you make in Sage Intacct Real Estate, you add a new property, you add a tenant, you add a new lease, the portal, that sends that data to Sage Intacct, which also sends it to this web portal. So there's never any double entry. You generate rent roll in Sage Intacct Real Estate, creates invoices in Sage Intacct, automatically creates an invoice in this web portal, and we can even email those out with links to pay if the subscriber chooses to do that. On the other side, when a tenant makes a payment, it updates Sage Intacct in real time, marking that invoice as paid, and that deposit is sitting there ready to be reconciled in the bank statement. Secondly, so there's never any double entry. Secondly, there's auto reminders. So for those that may have late lease payments or tenants that don't pay on time, automated reminders, automated statement generation, automated invoice, we can send those out. They all have links to pay. And we can make sure that we keep track of all the collection activity on each one of those invoices. And thirdly, probably just on a tenant perspective, the ease of use of making a payment. On a lot of these emails, on the statement or the reminder, it's a single click, takes them to their open invoice, and they can make a payment with a single click as well. So usually within 3 clicks, they have made that payment, get a receipt, update Sage, and they're ready to move on. Landlords, property managers are happy, tenants are happy.
And Sage Intacct uh, consultants at Ledgerable are happy. So I
Yeah,
can tell you,
absolutely.
I can tell you that from experience. So those three things are just the elimination of double entry, and we know that's the bane of not only getting the books closed on time, but also accuracy in the process. Number two, the auto reminder capability, and then number three, the ease of use. I'm going to unshare my screen and ask you to share your screen because we want to take a look uh, at the product and the functionality that you would want to show us. And while you're doing that, let me mention this. It's a secret that I know that I'm not sure everybody knows, and that is that we have attendees in today's webinar who are not using Sage Intacct Real Estate. And one of the things that I have learned in my visits with you, Wes, is that Sage, the CRE portal, will work in non-construction and real estate implementations, which means that if a a Sage Intacct subscriber wants to allow their customers to pay online or to have some of the capabilities that you provide, they're available to do that as well. Is that not correct?
That's correct. So we integrate not only with Sage Intacct Real Estate for leases and real estate management functionality, but also for those that don't subscribe to real estate, we can still use the AR automation features for customers against any location or entity that's in Sage Intacct. It
Okay,
does not
okay.
require Sage Intacct Real Estate, although this was built specifically for Sage Intacct Real Estate and for Sage Intacct.
And wow, based upon what I'm seeing on the screen, you've got your own dashboarding system. That's excellent. You didn't even mention that. And I know from experience that this is the type of information that folks need. Now, Wes, let me remind you, we only have 6 or 7 minutes or so we can't really spend a whole heck of a lot of time on this great feature. However, I didn't realize you had this capability, and I'm sure that it's a flexible capability as well. But since we do have limited time, what would you like to show us today?
Yeah, I think I'll just go through how a tenant would log in, make their payment, and the receipt that they get, and how it updates Sage.
Okay, so
Uh, s-
let me frame that just a little bit.
mm,
We're looking at the application from the perspective, or we will be looking at the application from the perspective of a tenant, correct?
Correct. This is an
Oh,
internal for your subscribers, your property management company. They would see all these menu items. The tenant sees something different, so I'll jump into that here in just a second. But that being said, so let me jump into, I added two invoices right before this webinar for a tenant called Natch Tenant. I don't know why it has that name, but it does. So these two invoices posted today, 250 and 125. As soon as they were entered in here, they show up on my receivable dashboard for invoices. I'll jump into this. So this would be an internal use for your accounts receivable to look through open invoices. I'll use the same feature for the Natch tenant. So those two invoices showed up automatically. If I were to click on this customer name, customer number, I would jump over into the tenant facing screen. So this is what the tenant would see. They don't see the other menu items. They only see this white label. This would have the subscriber, the property management, logo on it. And this is what they see. So they can do a lot of things, a lot here. We can hide or show all of these menu items based on your settings. So these are the two invoices. These three, so keep in mind that you might notice that these don't have a pay button. That basically means that the location or the entity or property that these are related to are not turned on for payments. So they can't make a payment against the location you're not accepting payments for. These are accepting payments. And you can do a couple things. You can pay an individual invoice by clicking this pay. You can pay all open invoices for any given location. Here, you can look through open items, pay them there. You can make a payment. So we want to make it front and center for your tenants to make a payment. They can also bypass this without having to log in. If they get sent a reminder or the invoice gets sent to them, it sends them to a page that they basically just make a payment. But I'm going to make this $250 payment. I want to make this payment. So I'm just going to click this. We have a partnership with Payload, a payment company, and it basically is one click. So we're paying 250. Let's talk about fees for a little bit. So in this test environment, zone 220, the tenant pays a $3 fee for ACH, and then they have different fees for credit cards or debit cards, and these are passed on to the tenant in this test environment. In the live environment, we can set it up different ways. Most of the time, subscribers or property management companies don't like to take credit card, debit cards, so they'll pass that as a convenience fee, and they will probably eat the cost. It's $2 per ACH in the live environment, and they will they will cover the cost of those. So I can add a new account, or I'll just pay using an existing payment. So I'll just click pay. Now, what that did is obviously create that payment. I emailed a receipt to the tenant. The landlord, property manager, if they choose, will get an email. They can print a receipt. They can, you'll notice I'll go back to the home page. That invoice is no longer open because it's been paid.
mm.
So that's the payment here. And I'll jump back into real estate. I'm sorry, into Intacct and show you that payment has been paid.
Ah, voila.
So it shows up as ready to be reconciled, marked as paid and Intacct. There's my transaction, which matches the transaction here.
Hmm. That's excellent. That's excellent. Let's just talk about the roadmap. What does the future look like for the portal? What are the things that you have to add in the near term?
Yeah, so some of the near-term enhancements will be the generation of some lease documents as well as lease addendums. using a couple different techniques. One is replacing like a Word document with some tokens. So pulling data from real estate or from Intact to populate, contracts. I'll also do an integration around the same time with an e-signature solution, so that after you generate those lease documents or addendums, you can send them out for e-signature as well. And then I'm coordinating with the developers at Sage Intacct Real Estate to have sales entry for percentage rent, the option to have your tenants upload sales figures, which will update Sage Intacct Real Estate in real time, along with some other attachments that they may need to update, and also lease insurance. So as lease insurance expires, we can provide a mechanism for that tenant to upload their lease insurance requirements, and I can push that data into Sage Intacct Real Estate as well. So that's on the short term by the end of, well, some by the end of this quarter, some by end of third quarter this year.
Wow. Wow, that ability to enable a percentage rent tenant to enter their own sales activity, to me, that must be like pulling teeth to get that information, and then you got to enter it. And it's probably like in a professional services situation, collecting timesheets. Just nobody really, it's kind of a negative component, certainly not from the landlord's perspective, but from the rest of the group. But that can be, I can see, a really valuable thing, as well as the ability to automate the sending out of lease renewals or lease documents or any type of agreement directly to the tenant. Wes, I got to tell you, we appreciate the support that you've given Ledgerable and to Ledgerable subscribers of Sage Intacct Real Estate, and also the support that you've given me today in presenting this valuable information to our attendees.
Well,
How can folks get a hold of you?
yeah, they can go to my website, CREPortals.com. And I think I'll stop sharing. I may have my contact information on your um, on your screen as well.
Okay, okay. Well, now I've got to figure out how to reshare my screen.
Whoops, sorry about that.
Looks like I'm successful. I think so, and I'm certain that I'll be told if I'm not. But thank you again, Wes,
Thank you for the
and
opportunity. Appreciate it.
you bet. And it's time for our fourth polling question, which is relating exactly to what Wes just shared. CRE Portal allows tenants and residents to pay their rent and review their account transaction register online. I can see, based upon all four of our questions, that we don't set the bar very high on our questioning. But then again, it's not about so much getting the question right as complying with the Texas State Board's requirements. But the answer here is obviously yes. Our tenants who are working with subscribers of Sage Intacct Real Estate and the CRE portal can pay their rent online. We just saw that happen. They can also review their count transaction register online. Remember, we have the Q&A function within the Zoom platform, and a minute or two or three or four in order to get some questions turned in. I'm going to, while you prepare some of those questions and present those for answer, do a bit of advertising. Uh, we or I have a lot of presentations that I prepare and give to professional service groups. Sometimes those are CFMA local chapters. Sometimes those are Texas CPA Society local chapters. Here are three. One's entitled Accelerating the Financial Close Automation Today, AI Tomorrow. Another relates to the blockchain news that you may have been reading in the newspaper lately around stable coins. It's entitled Changing Technology, Creative Disruption, and the Accounting Profession Thriving in a Blockchain Economy. And then the last one is Prosperity Through Recurring Revenue, Unleashing the Power of the Subscription Economy, which would directly relate to those construction and real estate companies who are providing maintenance contracts to their customers and field services technicians. We are also available for interaction at the CFMA Lone Star Conference later this year in October in San Antonio. So if you're joining from that area and you want to shake the hands of a Ledgerable representative, we'll be exhibitors there. And then next month, you want to scan that QR code and make sure that you attend next month's webinar, which is entitled Introducing Sage Intacct Construction Payroll Powered by ADP. They're a valuable partner to us in the Sage Intacct world, and we'd love for you to be a part of that presentation on Wednesday, July 30th from 12 to 1 Central Time. All right, let me see what questions we might have in our chat window. Here's one for you, Wes. Hoping that you're still there. You're still there, Wes?
I'm here.
Okay. What type of Sage Intacct user license is required for a property manager, for instance, to access your portal?
It's a separate subscription. You don't need any type of, we can deploy a web services user, so I don't need to have a user license in Sage Intacct Real Estate. And it's another subscription, no contract subscription. It's month to month only. So I hope that answers the question. So I don't need a user license in Intacct or in real estate. Just use my web services user account, and no other
So,
subscription is needed.
got it. Okay. I'm looking for other questions that have been submitted, and I just don't see any. It sounds like you are the hit of the show, Wes, but we're grateful for that. And let me just mention that again on July 30th, and I can segue back to that slide. We'll be from 12 to 1 presenting in our continuing series of construction related webinars, introducing Sage Intacct Construction Payroll powered by ADP. That's Wednesday, July 30th from 12 to 1 Central Time. Also qualifies for 1 hour of CPE credit. Please remember if you are here for that credit, uh, look out for, and I think it'll appear here in a moment, the evaluation form. Fill that out when you get the opportunity to. Keeps us from having to chase you down, which is kind of like trying to round up those timesheets or percentage rent sales statements. But until next time, Wednesday, July 30th. Have a great day.